You know that kind of thing that if you don't notice it in time, it's over? Well, the Romans were masters at this. They turned the ground itself into a weapon. And I'm not exaggerating. Imagine yourself in the middle of a battle, running, focused, on the enemy. Suddenly you feel an absurd pain in your leg. You look down and realize he just stuck his leg on a sharp stake hidden in the ground. That, my friend, is the famous encourage. They would spread these wooden or iron stakes in strategic locations. It wasn't random, no. They would choose exactly the points where they knew the enemy would pass. Narrow paths, entrances to fortresses, mandatory advance zones. In other words, where there was no way to deviate. And don't think it was just to stick you in, no. The idea was much more cruel. These stakes blocked everything. You fell, got hurt, screamed, and whoever was behind you tripped over you, fell, too, and got stuck on the spikes. It became chaos. But there's more. The impact wasn't just physical. When the soldiers saw all those people bleeding on the ground, slowly dying, that locked the mind. Fear took over. And who had the courage to continue? The Romans knew that winning a battle wasn't just about killing. It was about making the enemy fall apart inside. And to give you an idea of how serious this was, during the famous siege of Alesia, commanded by Julius Caesar, they filled the surroundings of the camp with stimulus. Whoever tried to escape or enter simply did not leave there intact. You know that thing about, if you run, the beast catches you, if you stay, the beast eats you? Here it was different. If you step on it, it's over. Hold on. Before I continue, I need your help. YouTube will only share this video with more people if it has a lot of interaction. In other words, without your comment, this knowledge could be buried and never reach those who need it. If this content makes sense to you, comment 1. If you disagree, comment 0 and tell me why. I want to see at least 100 comments here so that YouTube understands that this subject needs to be spread. So comment now and be part of this mission to reveal the secrets of ancient Rome. If you thought that the encourage it was already cruel, get ready because the Romans had an even more wretched trap. And look, this one didn't even give her a chance to get up afterwards. They called it Lilia, which surprisingly means lily in Latin. But there was nothing pretty here, you know? It was literally a garden of death. It works like this. They dug several holes, very deep, with a shape that resembled those 5 dots on a dice, you know? 1 in the middle and 4 in the corners. And at the bottom, they put a gigantic, sharp stake pointing upwards, but it didn't stop there. They camouflaged everything. They threw dirt, placed leaves, branches. Whoever looked thought it was just another piece of field until, bang, foot in the void. He fell. And when he realized, he was already pierced, deep down, struggling to get out. And to make matters worse, many of these stakes were dirty, with feces or even poison. That's right. If the wound didn't kill you instantly, the infection would do the job. These holes were located at the entrances to fortresses, in defense lines, in places where enemies were forced to pass. And look, there was no way to notice. Whoever fell stayed, and whoever saw a comrade fall and would freeze in fear. Imagine you're marching and, out of nowhere, the guy in front of you disappears. Gone. He fell into the hole and stayed there, screaming. This created an absurd fear in the troops, because it wasn't just the pain, it was that constant fear that the next step would be the last. No one knew where it was safe. And detail. These Lilia were not alone. No. Many times they came combined with the stimulus. In other words, you avoided the stake on the ground and fell into the hole. A perfect example of this was in the Hadrian's Wall there in England. The Romans filled that place with Lilia to protect the border. Anyone who tried to invade would simply disappear into the woods, straight into the depths of the holes. And the craziest thing of all, you didn't even need to be fighting. You just had to walk in the wrong place. And that was it. If you think jumping over a hole will solve it, I'm sorry to tell you no. The Romans thought about this too, and then the Scipii. They dug shallow, W-shaped trenches and filled the bottom with dry branches, cut very sharp like natural spears. The idea? make you trip, fall, and get all torn up. Whoever was trying to cross, I would open a cut on my leg, tear my knee, pierce my stomach. It was ugly, very ugly. And the worst part, there was no way to dodge them. These Sippi were right in front of the defenses, protecting camps, fortresses, and strategic points. Julius Caesar loved to use this. He would fill the path of his enemies with these ditches. Result? The guys arrived on the battlefield already broken, bleeding and terrified. Here, terror changed shape. There was no stake nor a trench with branches. It was water, and lots of it. The Romans dug huge ditches, very deep and filled with water. The enemy looked from afar and thought, "Don't worry, just cross over." But no, the ground sank, turned to mud. The soldiers got stuck. Their armor became heavy and drowning. It was that simple. For those trying to invade, it was a nightmare. And for those thinking of escaping the siege, it was even worse. Furthermore, war machines like turrets or battering rams simply didn't work. Water ruined any plan. In practice, it became a natural barrier that killed. Now hold on to this, because the Romans created a trap that it didn't kill you right away, but it left you completely trapped. And then, it was just a matter of time. They built a kind of network of intertwined branches, well hidden in the ground. When the enemy stepped, the thing closed on the body. It trapped legs, arms, clothes. Even the horses got tangled up. The soldier froze. He couldn't walk or fight. It became an easy target for the spears, arrows, and swords of the Romans. And to make matters worse, many times this was right behind the drowning pits, the Sippi, or the Lilia. In other words, if I didn't die in the first ones, I would be stuck in this one. Caesar loved this trap. In Siege of Alesia, he put a bunch of it around the camp. Result? No one escaped, no one entered. It was death or surrender. If up until now you thought, just get over on horseback, it's faster, forget it. It wouldn't work. The Romans had the strips, some small pieces, full of points that they threw on the floor. And do you know what was brilliant? No matter how they fell, there was always one end up. Always. All it took was for a horse to step on. And that was it. Pierced paw, animal on the ground, carriage stuck. The army that depended on cavalry or war chariots simply ceased to exist on the battlefield. These things were small, discreet, and deadly. And there was no need to hide them, because whoever looked, in the heat of battle I didn't even notice. I only realized later that I was on the floor screaming. This is how the Romans ended up with entire cavalries, as in the famous Battle of Carrhae. And to close, here comes a trap that honestly it's worthy of a horror movie, because she played with what every soldier trusted, the floor. It works like this. The Roman army dug huge ditches very deep, wide enough to disappear an entire group of soldiers. Then, they covered everything with a thin layer of soil, leaves, branches. It looked like normal ground. Perfect. The enemy, without even suspecting, advanced confidently. And suddenly, the ground simply disappeared beneath our feet. People were falling, horses were falling, equipment was falling. It was a complete disaster. And when you're in the middle of the battle in the chaos looking ahead, who pays attention to whether the floor is real or a trap? Nobody. These pits were not just physical traps. They were a devastating psychological weapon. Because after you see a companion simply disappear into the ground, or hear the screams coming from below, your mind freezes. Fear takes over. You start to wonder if the next step will be your last. And look, this isn't an isolated story. It happened in Battle of Lugdunum, one of the greatest confrontations in ancient Rome. The enemy army dug hundreds of these wells in the path of the Romans. Result? Severus's army simply melted into the field. Another example, the Battle of Tours. There the enemies prepared so many holes, so many traps that the Romans fell like flies. They lost men, equipment, horses, and more than that, lost their morals. The craziest thing is that this type of trap didn't choose its victim. Whoever passed by, fell. If it wasn't in the first, it was in the second. And if you escaped the hole, there was still Sippy, Estimule, Servos, Strips, Lilia. It was an entire field programmed to destroy you physically and mentally. And look, if after hearing all this, you think you would survive a war against Rome, tell me in the comments, I would survive if you think you would have a chance. Or no way, if you know you would just be another fallen man on the field. I want to see who is being sincere here. And if you think these traps were shocking, leave a like now because that really helps this video reach more people. And don't leave here, no. Now click on this video that's appearing on your screen because there I'll tell you other bizarre secrets that Rome never wanted you to know. And look, there's stuff there that will give you goosebumps. I'll wait for you there. These objects show that in the midst of the war there was still room for hope, faith, and even fun. Soldiers who knew they could die at any moment, but still carried memories, luck, and identity on their backs. Each piece found today tells a silent story, not only about the Roman Empire, but about the human being who existed beneath the armor. And now tell me, which of these items surprised you the most? Leave a comment. I'll read them all. If this video taught you something new or sparked your curiosity about this lesser-known side of Roman soldiers, leave a like, subscribe, and click on the next video that is appearing on the screen now. Believe me, Rome still holds many secrets, and we will reveal them together. See you there.